The first case of novel coronavirus was reported in Wuhan, China in December 2019. Early cases were believed to be linked to a live animal market in Wuhan and have since been spreading from person to person. Shortly after, cases of the virus began to appear outside of China, and on January 20th, 2020, the first case of novel coronavirus was reported in the United States. On January 30th, the World Health Organization declared the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern.
More cases should be expected in other parts of China and possibly other countries.
Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses, named for their shape, protruding spikes that look like a crown or a corona. SARS and MERS are part of the coronavirus family, as well as viruses that cause the common cold. The 2019 novel coronavirus was officially named COVID-19 on February 11th by the World Health Organization. Suspected community spread was first reported in the United States on February 26th, with no known links to people who've traveled to Wuhan, China. WHO said on February 27th that COVID-19 has pandemic potential.
This virus does not respect borders.
COVID-19 can cause flu-like symptoms that range from mild to severe, including cough, fever, and shortness of breath. Since the infection can include symptoms similar to pneumonia, influenza, and the common cold, only a diagnostic test can confirm whether or not an individual is positive for the virus. Thousands of people have died around the world. The first deaths in the United States occurred on February 26th. There are trials underway for treatments, but vaccines are still in the development phase and likely more than a year away. CDC officials say that Americans should prepare for major disruptions to their daily routines. Recommendations to reduce the risk of infection include regular hand washing, covering mouth and nose when coughing and sneezing, avoiding close contact with anyone showing signs of respiratory illness such as coughing and sneezing, avoiding touching your face, disinfecting frequently touched objects and surfaces, using an alcohol-based hand sanitizer if soap and water aren't available. If you're sick, stay home. If you're experiencing severe symptoms or are worried that you've contracted the virus, call your doctor before going in.
It's like a public service announcement, which we're all concerned with. I'm sure this is worrisome to all of us, and I don't know, what I'm most worried about is when it happens to you, what do? I'm told you call a doctor, and somehow you have to get tested somehow, and testing is not as readily available as President Trump says it is, and I guess it's all up in the air. Welcome to the show, Leslie Robinson.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thank you.
What's your opinion of this coronavirus thing?
It's unfolding. I'm watching it carefully. I mean, the good news is most people recover from it. It passes through like a cold or a flu and they recover. That's so far the case, so that has me less worried. I felt I had laryngitis and I went to urgent care just to make sure nothing was contagious. They did some swabs.
Recently?
This past weekend.
This past weekend?
Yeah, my throat, I couldn't talk.
Yeah.
I didn't have any coughing or sneezing or anything like that.
Did you go through a panic attack?
So I went, no, not at all.
Okay.
I went to urgent care, they did a flu swab, did a few tests, they told me I was not contagious, and they were very adamant that most people will not, this is what they said, it's not what I'm saying, most people will not contract it, it's a big media story, it's not nearly as dangerous as, this is what the doctors were saying there, as people are making it out to be. We'll see in the next few weeks, right? Obviously people are dying from the flu in much larger numbers. Okay. So it's unfolding at the moment, right?
At least they didn't say it was a hoax.
Yeah. So
no, it's not a hoax.
So my way in on this, you know, as with a lot of things when you're talking about, you know, hype and, you know, fear mongering and, you know, scaring the wits out of people, I guess for me, what my concern is, and I haven't heard much about it, about vulnerable populations, and they speak about age and people that will be vulnerable. But what they haven't talked about is the vulnerable population of those that are incarcerated. And I'm very, very upset at the fact that there has not been much focus or much attention on the population of people that are incarcerated, except for the statement that Governor Cuomo made yesterday of the fact that they were going to have the people that are incarcerated at the Great Meadows Correctional Facility manufacture hand sanitizer for the population. Now you're talking about hand sanitizer and you're talking about alcohol-based substance, which in correctional facilities is considered contraband. But you're talking about having people incarcerated to manufacture alcohol-based hand sanitizer for use outside of the facilities. But what about inside of the facility? What about preventative care? What about treatment? What about testing for the incarcerated population? And I haven't heard anything about that. So I have a concern, about that, as well as concern of the community at large. But I have a concern for the community that is behind those walls that not much information is coming out about.
Leroy?
Excellent point
Yeah.
regarding the incarcerated.
Right.
Given the laws that have been passed in the past several administrations to incarcerate more and more people, and those people have been, are black folks. The point made about the environment in those facilities, which I have not been a part of, but I've spoken to brothers who have been in prison. If this thing is real, it's even more real in that environment. That's number one, borrowing on
You
his
have some
point.
doubts about it being real? No.
If it's real.
Okay.
Now, I interviewed a brother, Dr. Scott Whitaker. He's the co-author of the book, Medicine. And he pointed out that, I don't have the list in front of me, he said every 4 years there's a virus. Every 4 years, and every 4 years, every election year, there is a virus scare, whether it's swine flu, SARS, Ebola, et cetera, all the way up to the present. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, rather. Number three is I feel that in light of history, black people have to pay attention to their intuition regarding these things. Number four is that which is not spoken about that I haven't heard on general media, and that is how to build your immune system and what we may be doing, eating, drinking, etc., that weakens our immune system.
Okay.
In addition to the incarcerated, we have to look at the nursing homes.
Right.
All right, we have to look at the nursing homes. So all I know is what I get from listening to WBAI, listening to Gary Knoll, listening to Dr. Lynn Horowitz, and this brother, Dr. Scott Whitaker, and Dr. Jennifer Daniels. These are voices that you don't hear or see in so-called popular media. And I also would make this point that if you're a TV viewer and you dwell on MSNBC, CNN, you're gonna wind up sick, stressed out. Because all of them saying the same thing.
Yeah, just true. Right.
There's no way out.
Oh, they're not saying there's no way out.
What they present,
I
there's no
watched
way
them.
out. You're gonna stay in your home, you're gonna look out the window before you go, you peep through the peephole.
No, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I watch it
They're
daily.
trying to lead us
I'm
there.
a constant
No,
watcher.
they're trying to lead
I
us
spend
there.
a lot of hours watching MSNBC. What I've heard that I found quite amazing, I forgot the name of the website, my wife showed it to me, where they had said that you couldn't catch coronavirus if you were black because of the fact that you have melanin in your skin. All right? So I looked at the website and there was a bunch of other weird stuff up there. So you have to understand there's a lot of propaganda going out there. So you have to be very careful what you listen to. But mainly you can't listen to Donald Trump. That's the scary part of this whole thing. Now, this is the real concentration that we have to understand. That this nut that we have in the White House, it doesn't believes everything's a hoax. Now he came, and you can watch, I call it psychosis. I think the man's completely
Unhinged.
egomaniac. No, you can't hate the man because the man is slick. He's a New Yorker. He's the slickest New Yorker we know. Because look at the con job he played on the planet. Look at what he's doing. I mean, he deserves an Academy Award for being Mr. Khan. And all the people, fools that you might say, or what he's done, he's frankly, I mean, he's in a position where he can destroy the planet with a misstep here, a misstep there. Mm-hmm. But see, the good forces are gathering around, and I think this is just nothing but a test for democracy, really. It's going to unfold how righteousness and goodness will prevail, and that God is real. Mm-hmm. There's a cure for everything, and I think it's God, okay?
Righteousness prevails when it's executed with action.
Okay.
There are those of us who are righteous, we pray, and we stay in our homes, don't do anything.
Right.
And things are going to happen of good.
Now, what do we do? Being righteous, we get out and vote.
Being righteous,
That's the
we take steps to manifest the truth and the honesty of what we know to be real.
Well, that's what we're doing here.
Okay. Voting is just one aspect of it. Also, being righteous and honest is that when we have information regarding voting, mm-hmm. we have to share that with our people, otherwise our people are going to be fooled again.
Okay.
Such as the Russians, this is in quotes, the Russians stole the vote in Florida, the Russians stole the vote in Michigan, which is not true. Those votes were stolen in Detroit, in Michigan, and in Florida, and in Ohio, on a consistent basis, and changed the whole realm of who won elections. So mm-hmm. Hillary didn't lose because black people didn't come out.
You don't believe that?
Hillary lost. Okay, how do I say what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Greg Palast, who is an investigative reporter, if ever the audience has a chance to plug into him on the internet, see what he's saying about the votes that were stolen in the last election. So the Russians, they ain't have that power. Not arguing that point for the Russians, because they're for their people, and they make deals for their country, the oligarchs, etc. But the honesty...
How about Putin and Trump? You don't think they're partners?
Well, it's said that Trump wanted to open up a Trump facility in Moscow and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And also Trump, we look at Trump as an individual, but that individual has components. He's the number one,
his family.
Roy Cohn. That was one of his teachers, one of his avid teachers. Mm-hmm. And he listened to Roy Cohn. Those individuals who are familiar with Roy Cohn and those who are not should go back and do some research on who Roy Cohn, how nasty that individual was, how vicious he was.
He was a mobster lawyer.
Well, he was vicious.
Wasn't he a mobster lawyer?
I don't know about that,
well,
but I know they would use.
He was famous for.
They would use somebody. They would use somebody like him. Here's the thing. The bottom line is that Trump has been a salesman, and he has not stopped doing that. So he's able to pizzazz them, these audiences that come out to see him. That kind of analysis has not been done for us, by us. I'm talking about black folks breaking down stuff. I'm just a dummy on the street corner. I do know that there are blacks who know propaganda and how it works in America, but you don't hear them. They have the knowledge, but they don't share it. But that's their problem.
Aren't we doing that here?
I don't have the full knowledge. I have knowledge that I gleaned from the interviews that I do.
We're taking propaganda and trying to clear the air.
Propaganda
such as
is
melanin
a bad
in your
word
skin.
to black people. Propaganda. So when we talk about propaganda, we have to break it down, which is the promotion of an idea or promotion of an organization, et cetera. That's what it is. But it's been portrayed going back to the time of the Cold War, that the Russians were putting out, the communists putting out propaganda. All the while, the people who were saying that were putting out propaganda. But that's another story.
That's a waging a war.
Exactly.
We're putting out propaganda here. The God in me loves the God in you. How's that?
Amen.
That's
Good
propaganda.
propaganda. There's good propaganda and bad propaganda,
That's
right?
That's right.
All right, let's
And then
talk.
there's silence, right?
Let's talk about being in prison and what you do about it, or getting out of prison and be able to vote once you get out, and participate in this challenge that you've given us to make everybody aware of the propaganda that we all and we all take it in every day of our lives. You know, everything is information that you have to decipher and decide what is good for you and the people around you, and it's nothing but the God and the devil talking to you every which way. And you as an individual have to take the personal, you know, basis of yourself as a human being and spread the joy. So that's what we do here at the Gillchrist Experience.
Right.
We spread the joy. We spread the information. I'm propagandizing, as Putin does, and Trump. And they're a team, and believe me, I know it in my heart. And I have proof of that. Anyway. All right, so let me show this video, number 2. We're going to run on Leslie Robinson and her game on how to deal with your environment after you come out of prison. And it's in a card game, and it's very therapeutic, and we have evidence of it by, well, let's watch the piece first, and we'll come back to you. All right, number 2, please.
Thank you very, very much for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. So I created the Recharge Beyond the Bars re-entry game to provide a safe healing space for people to process all sorts of things that are going on inside, have a good time, bond, get support, get guidance, and not feel alone.
These are appreciation chips, so if you feel like anybody really put something into their answer, then you can give them a chip to validate them. Only if it's a good thing. Really.
If we had these type of games in the prison, maybe we would have a little bit more better understanding of who we are and a little bit higher education when we come home to tackle the world as a post-exoneree.
What is the most important piece of advice you would give to someone who's going into their first day of incarceration? Be prepared for something you never experienced before. Your entire identity is taken away that you had as a free person. No longer will you be a father, a husband, a part of the human race. You go into prison and you become a statistic. You become a number. My number was 85A 2837, and I was sentenced to Sing Sing prison for a 15 to life sentence. It was an amazing game. I learned a lot from other people's experiences that I didn't know about. So I think that's one of the features of this game. It opens up the world to other people about experiences you have not experienced. So I recommend this game to people who are coming out of prison or people who are free. You'll learn about life.
Each person, draw a picture of the state of your soul.
Alright, hang on. Here's, mountain, sunshine, it's freedom, but I'm still standing in a lake of fire. I have my own personal turmoil, my own demons, and, that represents my anxiety, my fears, my PTSD. Just had a group playing of the game Recharge. I thought it was thoroughly entertaining. It helped me look at parts of my life that I haven't touched upon since my exoneration, which was 3 years ago.
My soul,
Marshall.
yeah. That's my heart. It's broken, shattered in a couple places, but it's bandaged together, and it's on fire. And when I went in, I thought I was gonna die. And I was told I was never going to be able to do anything, but at some point, so it was all dark, but then at some point there was a fire that lit up. Very emotional for me to go through some of these questions about experiences. Sometimes we forget things, and I think it's incredibly important to remember and to learn from our experiences. I like that the game is for formerly incarcerated and also for allies. I could imagine it be useful in any setting, from correctional facilities to reentry programming.
So I'm trying to draw fire. I'm trying to draw.
You noticed I can draw, right?
I'm trying to draw fire, so I just, the soul's kind of on fire with trying to just accomplish.
Oh, wow.
Just try to accomplish, worlds to conquer, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Yes. Thank you.
Love it.
Recharge assists me in communicating with friends and family who have not been incarcerated. It has a lot of ice-breaking questions which facilitate communication, as well as assisting me in connecting with other people who are incarcerated. All who play it will love, laugh, and heal.
Welcome back. As you see, Leslie, it's interesting. As you know, Jeff was on the show. How long ago was that?
About a month ago.
Month or two?
About a month or two ago, yes.
Month or two ago. And Jeff had been wrongfully incarcerated and came out and got his law degree, and now he's helping other offenders. And he's done well. He spent 16 years. That's interesting. How does this help people who imagine solitary confinement, which is our main interest here about being incarcerated, because that really causes psychological trauma or deprivation. I mean, you've got to go mad being by yourself. And we showed a couple of scenes here. Khalif Browder is the biggest one that we can think about being affected, the youth being affected by solitary confinement. But this game, Recharge, seems to have been, how did you come up with the idea of Recharge?
So about 30 years ago, I ran a poetry project at Rikers Island for 2 years. And
what kind of program?
Poetry project at the women's prison, Rose M. Singer Center.
Okay.
So I went in every 2 weeks and we kicked poetry for 2 hours. Did that for 2 years. So I was in a lot of pain from my own childhood trauma, and so I really resonated very deeply. There's very few spaces you can go into where you can share your pain, the depths of your pain, and that was a place that was incredibly healing for me as well. So that stayed with me over time as I moved into many different spaces. And my first game is called Keep It Real, and the idea just came fully formed to me. It helps people talk about life. It's used in 1,000 colleges, families, friends, and it just made sense to then do another version specifically targeted towards people who are and who have been incarcerated. So there's hundreds of questions about incarceration. Everybody answers around the same exact questions, so you're getting guidance from the way different people are handling things or perceiving things or experiencing things. You come out of isolation, you recognize you're not alone. that other people are sharing those same feelings and pain and experiences, and then so that's very, very healing. Talking is the #1 way to heal from trauma. Nothing else can even match it, and there's almost nothing to give people that outlet and that experience. So that's
What
where it
in your
comes from.
early childhood drove you to this?
Pardon me?
What happened to you in your early
Well,
childhood?
my,
Were you
my
incarcerated?
mother really didn't want children, and my dad wanted boys. I was the 4th girl, and at that time you couldn't test, and she kind of lost it when I came out because she wanted to stop. She wanted the boy and then stop having children, so she, by her own admittance, we had a very troubled relationship, but she told me she had tried to kill me a bunch of times when I was an infant, and then every day as a child told me it was the worst thing that ever happened to her, on and on. So I was entirely unwanted. And many more things happened, inter-family, out of family, throughout my childhood. So there's a lot.
What led you to the prison cell? What made you want to go?
I was a social worker, so I was working in shelters, homeless shelters, shelters for runaway youth, you know, I was in the communities, and it was just something I felt drawn to. My whole life is what I feel drawn to. So I met the person in charge of letting people in, because at that time they had only let 1 volunteer into Rikers Island. At that time they didn't have any programming, volunteer programming. And we were talking, I lobbied for about a year, and he finally let me get in, and I was just led there, and it was incredibly healing for me. And very powerful. And people were just so open and into it, and yeah.
You know, Victor's been bringing people to the show for the last couple of years. He has a once a month segment here. And how did he choose? Well, I know from the Recharge game, but how did you two hook up? She was in the prisons, and
So what happened actually last year at the National Actual
yeah, I remember. Yeah,
Annual Convention, you know, I do a criminal justice panel every
at the
year.
convention.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And I believe somebody told her about me and the work that I was doing with the Second Chance Committee, as well as, you know,
I knew
how
about you.
connected to the reentry population. And, you know, she came to me after the panel and introduced herself and told me, you know, who she was, and, you know, she would be interested in talking to me about this Recharge. And at the time, I didn't know what Recharge was. That's the first time I heard it. And, you know, from there, you know, we just kept in communications, and we kept talking, and we had the face-to-face meeting, and eventually, you know, she like kind of sort of like sold me on the idea of Recharge and how it could factor into the work that I do with the reentry component of Second Chance, and how this is healing and reconciliation and addressing trauma, and so much of a needed component about a person's reentry from incarceration. And I just knew that, you know, based upon the platform that Second Chance operates on in terms of helping the formerly incarcerated reintegrate, definitely what has been and is missing about reentry for people who have been incarcerated is the psychological component, the address of the trauma and the collateral damages that happen to people, you know, while they're there, but also how they carry what happens to them outside. And not having a mechanism by which to address these traumas that we oftentimes push down deep when you're incarcerated, and most of the time we don't talk about it, that presented an opportunity for this to manifest itself. So that's how we got connected.
Well, Leslie, you're a therapist also. So this, that's why I called it group therapy. Might be offensive to some, but that's what I saw when I saw the game played at NAN. I saw people expressing their concerns or their experiences, like they say on the piece, and it was a healing. You saw it come on the people's people on the piece, how they felt relieved or
recharged.
Healed. Recharged, of course, recharged. Good wording, but I mean that's what we all need.
Yeah, it's really not being paid much attention to. It's mostly education, housing, which are incredibly important. But I know from my own 30 years of therapy, I could go without food. I mean, when the pain, emotional pain is so devastating, you're not going to hold a job. You're not going to keep your home. People fall through the cracks because of unprocessed trauma all the time. And it's just not being addressed, right? It's like people just want to turn away from that whole piece. So.
Have you taken this to the prisons?
It's in 75 prisons.
Already in.
It's in 75
Rikers
prisons.
Island bought 65 games. They use it in all their adult programs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all throughout New Jersey, Ohio. Yeah, it's being used by thousands of people, and a lot of peer-to-peer facilitation. So I created specifically so anybody can get a game, play with your family, play with your friends, run your own groups. We have every first and third Thursday of every month a reentry support group at the National Oxygen Network on West 145th Street. Thank you very much, Victor, who set that up as the chairman of the Second Chance Committee.
Okay.
So we have groups there, and we're looking for people who want to start groups wherever they are. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So people can heal and be part of a support network. And yeah.
Leroy, anything to add?
What comes to mind is understanding, I'm part of the public, that the public doesn't really understand what happens behind the prison walls.
That's right. That's right.
And we just see somebody being sentenced to 23 years, 25 years to life, et cetera, and they can't get out. That's
Right.
what we, but inside, my interpretation of what happens to black men in particular is that that's where we're turned into animals.
Soul murder.
And have an animal approach, whether it's a jail or whether it's a prison. And when I say we are turned into animals, a good portion of us, where's dog eat dog. And the things that happen.
That's outside too.
The mindset. So here are people who go into that and say, damn, all I did was steal an automobile or embezzle some money from a client, whatever the situation. I'm talking about minor stuff. And they go in, and this is a traumatic experience. And you can't, for black men and women, you can't come out of that without the aid of a spiritual belief.
Okay. All right.
It's mind, it's body, mind, and spirit. And that's how black people are healed. Body, mind, and spirit. What we saw in Recharge is working on the mind, getting them to pull some of the stuff out, feel relaxed. That's what I saw in that. But the total pathway to healing for us going in that stuff, because it's designed, my opinion, mass incarceration is actually a war on black men in America. And that leaves orphans out there.
Yeah.
We don't see torn down buildings, but we do see the orphans. Like last week, you saw these young brothers stomping on this girl out in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But the night before, you saw white police stomping on a black boy at night in Brooklyn. So you're dealing with animalistic mindset in both instances. My point is, when you look at our children, we have to, not getting off the thing, but we have to look at how we're going to save our children from a mindset that is furthering the war against black people. My question to Victor is the role of miseducation and uneducation that you saw in the prison population, getting them there.
So, yeah. So, I think so, Brother Leroy, in terms of the points that you made, in terms of the miseducational piece that kind of sort of like leads you down the path that eventually you become a captured slave again. And of course, you know, we know that prisons and incarceration is an extension of slavery masked over. And everything about prison, you know, is designed to not heal you or even make you better, but to agree with Brother Leroy, to make you worse than you was even before you went in. And that's the design and the platform upon which the prison industrial complex operates. So a lot of times, oftentimes, because of the trauma, because of the treatment, because of the isolation and the separation, and oftentimes the disintegration of family contact, it creates a whole nother person. Bring it back to the me. What happened to me while I was incarcerated, I wasn't, I guess, one of those riffraff guys in the jail. I wasn't involved in prison contraband, smuggling drugs, and beating up people and extorting people and all. I wasn't into none of that stuff. But being in an environment of incarceration, when you're out of sight, out of mind, they can just about do anything they want to you, right? And what happened to me, you know, being stomped out, beat out, you know what I'm saying, placed in solitary confinement for not a violent offense and not for possession of contraband or even getting in a fight, it turned me into a different person, let me say it like that. I was worse when I came out of solitary confinement than before I went in.
Okay.
So our prisons are, you know what I'm saying, an extension of slavery, but in terms of healing and making a person better and paying your debt to society, it's a lie. It's a lie. And it's a lie that's been perpetrated for centuries upon centuries upon centuries to make society feel safer when you lock up people and throw away the key, as they say, tough on crime and all of that kind of good stuff. But back to his thing, what happens to those people when they go into those jails? You don't know. And oftentimes there are no programs that are specifically designed to help people heal or become better. And guess what? Most of the programs that are in those prisons and jails right now are programs that was designed by the people that were incarcerated.
The beneficial program.
That's right. The beneficial program that actually works, that actually heals, that actually addresses all of those issues like you spoke about, are designed and ran by people incarcerated.
Well, from a non-black or a white person, how do you feel seeing these injustices and you coming with a recharge game to try to relieve some of these problems?
As I spent 30 years, many places I worked, I was the only white person.
Right.
So,
so you see it as plain as day.
I feel very deeply about as a human being.
Okay.
As a human being who cares very deeply and who has gotten so much from the black race in so many ways through
like
the depth.
Robinson, your last name.
Like my last name.
He said that, right?
But also, you know, through being able to share and be deep, which you don't often get to do with a lot of white people. It's beginning to change as more people are opening up.
What don't you get to exchange?
Just through having a lot of friends growing up, work experiences where I was working mostly with people of color, just being able to be deep and be real and be authentic.
Okay.
You know, I grew up in an environment where you couldn't really have feelings.
Okay.
You had to, you know. So, I mean, really honestly, I don't know if you remember, decades ago, very few white people went up above 125th Street.
Yeah.
Very,
They
very
also
few.
get off at 96th Street.
Right. So I'd work up above there, and I could feel myself being able to breathe once I got, being able to breathe and feel once I got up above 125th Street. So, you know I have white skin, but I don't, I identify very deeply with black people from my own experiences and my life and my friends, and so I think I don't know how anybody, if they let themselves really look at it, can't be horrified that all these people are in cages and human beings being treated this way and having to endure this kind of thing.
It reminds me of what Reverend Martin Luther King said. You have to judge a person by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin.
That's correct.
And that's what we promote here. So
I wish more white people would raise.
Well, see, that's what has to happen. That's why you're on, Leslie, so we know that we have people of all shades that believe in the God in me, loves the God in you, and we whatever that was trying to say. Something didn't get out. But, you know, we're trying to perfect a love energy that can cover everything. And I just want to show you a person that really, from incarceration, from being innocent, and it's a prime example of what solitary confinement can do to you, and what, as a young mind, going into an environment of this mass, you know, stop and frisk, all wrapped up into one young mind. And play number 6 for me. Get that ready. And we want to talk about Kalief Browder. Because that, to me, really opened up a lot of eyes, and minds in particular, to what happens indoors when you're coming home from a party, your first night your mother lets you out, and you're picked up on the street on the stop and frisk, Bloomberg's.
The broken windows
you're
program,
thrown in solitary confinement. You're a little guy, and you fight anything come close to you, and you don't want to own up to being wrong because your brother went through the same pain, owning up to something he was innocent for and was labeled. So everything's wrapped up into Kalief Browder, and all the demons that came at him at the end, that he committed suicide, and his mother died from heartache of going through all this pain. So all the stories of the struggle that we go through and that we've been talking about are really shown in just this one story. So let's run number 6 and we'll be right back at you.
No, number 6.
Show it.
No, number 6.
Oh, that's crazy.
Improvise.
Oh,
the young brother that was accused. That's the young brother who was accused of stealing a backpack.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
And a part of his story is that he was in there because the bail couldn't be met.
His father wouldn't pay the bill because he thought he did it.
Right, and the other part of it is that they offered him a plea deal.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to say he was guilty, and he knew he wasn't. So combination of not being able to pay the bill, as well as not wanting to plead guilty to something that he didn't do. So of course,
his brother got hung up in the same scheme.
The bail part is something that has to be studied, because a huge portion of the incarcerated are there. They haven't even had a trial. They just haven't had the ability to meet bail. And there's, quote, it's a very interesting war that's going on to reinstitute. In other words, they've had a change in bail laws, and I haven't followed it, but I'm just aware of it.
I'm a part of it.
But the fact of media vehicles to push back on that, push back on something that's geared to heal. And I'm talking about a daily paper. It doesn't even matter, that mindset. So that's one thing. The other thing is that our youth, in terms of schooling, it really has to be looked at. Our youth are not being educated, and white youth aren't being educated.
Right.
There's a miseducation, there's a non-education, there's a dumbing down of America that's taking place. And you can go on the internet, look at Dumbing Down of America. Charlotte Isobite has written about it. It's an area that parents and grandparents who are viewing this program should investigate, because when they investigate whether their children know how to write a coherent letter and actually use penmanship, they will be surprised, and they will have to jump in and begin to educate our children, in addition to sending these children to school, that we have to teach our children how to read and write. They're not learning that.
That's right.
And what I understand of the incarceration from a brother that I interviewed, Brother Robert, that the the ones who he got into become a legal, what do you call a jailhouse
Paralegal,
lawyer?
yeah.
He became, because he knew how to read and write. So
Yeah.
the brothers, he came from Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy. So the ones, when he went to prison, they made him go to the law library.
Wow.
And he had to read because they were forcing him, because he was the only one in the group who knew how to read and write. He was able to shorten his sentence because now being able to read and write and focus, he was able to spot the inconsistencies in the sentencing, et cetera. But above and beyond that, he was able to help others get out of prison while he was in prison and after. So the fact that you went into legal, you know, is a story in itself. How'd you get there? What led you there? What made you focus? And the victories that you were able to achieve after you got into the legal area. These are stories that are not told.
No.
That movie with Denzel Washington, what was it called?
Shawshank.
Esquire something.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I just don't remember the name, yeah.
When you look at that film, he goes into court, and he's talking to the assistant DA.
So the 70s, right?
No, this is like
Recent?
last year. This is the movie.
No more than 2 years ago.
Yeah, right.
It's something Esquire, something like that.
His last name is Esquire, but we can't think of the first name, where he was a lawyer. Denzel Washington, he was given the narrative.
Well, he helped the lawyer.
Right, he helped the lawyer. And he even came up with the case.
He was smarter than the lawyer he was helping, or just as smart as.
Right.
But the point is, at that point where he went to the assistant district attorney, she's the prosecutor, whatever, and he asked her about the charge, which carried a whole lot of time. He said, "Why are you doing that?" She said, "Basically, that's just what I'm doing." You know, it showed, that piece showed a piece of the so-called justice system. And in Florida, for the men and women who have been paroled, they have come up with a tax. They don't call it a poll tax. You familiar with that?
You talk about the supervision fee. That's what they supervision fee. But
they got to pay that before they can vote.
Yeah.
That's in Florida.
Right.
They ain't got nothing to do with no Russians.
Right.
That's the Republicans.
Well, believe me,
that's the Republicans.
Voter suppression is real. Stacey Abrams would be governor of Georgia if it wasn't for voter suppression.
And
voter suppression we've been fighting for 50 years at least. That's what always happened. That's what's been happening since day one of slavery, voter suppression. But the point is that we have the right to vote, but we have to vote. All right? Now that's where the action comes in. And we have to vote. And we all have a dog in the fight. Yeah. All right? We have a dog in the fight. It's the Democratic Party that's our dog. All right? No matter who's picked, we have to vote.
That's right.
You have to look at whether that dog got teeth.
I don't care what kind of teeth, no teeth, anybody but Trump.
And
get rid of McConnell. You hear me? Now I'm going to show you a real president. Play number 3 for me. I'm sure you got that one. Just for a little lightheartedness, I'm sure you my man, who should be, if he could run 3 terms. Well, with Biden, we get Obama back.
Right.
All right?
Or some form, right?
Some form of it. At least I get to see Michelle again. All right?
Midterm elections heading into the final stretch. Any Democratic slip-up, any hint of a Democratic scandal could tip things in favor of Republicans. And earlier today, with this headline, at first glance, it looked like the Drudge Report had placed the president at the center of a sex scandal. It read, "Man warns president not to touch girlfriend." But when you clicked on the link, it took you to a video of the president voting early at his polling place in Chicago, where shortly after the president headed into his voting booth, an absolutely incredible scene unfolded. The boyfriend of the woman voting next to him walked past the president and jokingly said, "Don't touch my girlfriend." The following exchange is pretty incredible.
You know, I really wasn't planning on it.
I am sorry. Please excuse him.
Now, there's an example of a brother just embarrassing you for no reason.
Embarrassing.
Just for no reason whatsoever.
I knew he was going to say something smart, but I didn't know what he was going to say.
And now you'll be going back home and talking to your friends about it. I cannot believe it. What's his name?
Mike.
I can't believe Mike. He is such a fool.
He really is.
I was just mortified. Fortunately,
she's having a conversation with the president.
Fortunately, the president was nice about it.
I'm freaking out right now.
You know, so it's all right.
Thank you so much.
That's right. Mike seems like a decent guy. He's a decent guy.
This is not happening. This really is.
Hey, you're going to kiss him, give him something to talk about.
Take care of yourself.
That's easily the 15th time I've won.
Oh, figure it out.
As my staff will tell you, I have. And joining me now are the couple at the center of it all, Aya Cooper and Michael Jones. All right, I love this video so much. Mike, can I start with you? What possessed you?
Sure.
What possessed you in that moment to make that joke?
It was just so quiet in the room, and we walked in, and everybody's eyes were glued to the president, as mine were too. It was a once-in-a-lifetime type of thing, and as I walked to my booth, I saw her there frantically trying not to panic, and I had to say something. I had to say something that would make just ease the situation. All you heard was cameras going off. So I had to go ahead and say something, that's all.
Can I just say this? I completely understand that because I've been at a few events with the president and I have that same urge. In fact, I've said a few things which I've then reported to my wife, which she was like, that's right on the border of whether you can say that to the president. So I actually was like texting her when I saw it. I was like, well, that's, if you can get away with that, what was your response?
Why? Like, why would you do this? And I was just nervous, super nervous, and I couldn't believe that he said that. And another part of me was just like, shut up, they're gonna tackle you, shut up. So just a lot. Ball of nerves, ball of nerves.
There was something kind of amazingly gracious in the way the president then played that out and kind of like took your nervousness away from you to basically reassure you that it was okay and the whole thing wasn't the mortifying nightmare that you possibly thought it was for a second.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So have you now been like telling all your friends exactly the conversation that the president mapped out for you in that interaction?
Yeah, friends and family have pretty much reached out. Everyone saw it on the local news, and it's just been pretty interesting our last few days. I mean, it was just an experience I wanted to give her. I knew she was, you know, just nervous going up there in the booth next to him, that she probably wasn't even paying attention to her ballot. But I mean, it wasn't anything that the president did. I want to make that clear. It was just something that I always do to her. She knows very well it's my personality. I am very spontaneous, and I will just put her out in the front street of anyone in order to make her smile and laugh, just like she did.
Hey, were you actually able to focus on voting on the ballot?
Oh, I was trying. I was trying really hard. I actually did. I mean, I did see who I wanted to vote for, and I did vote for that person, but after he said that, I was just like, oh my God, please, just Secret Service, don't take him out. Just don't, please don't. And then standing next to the president, and he's sitting up here actually having a conversation, I'm like, this is surreal. This cannot be happening right now. So it was just a great experience. It really was.
I will say, in Mike's defense, as he noted, you then did have a conversation with the president that would not have happened had he not made the joke.
Very true.
All right,
Correct.
final question, you guys. There's been some news reports that say you're engaged. Is that true or not?
No, not yet.
Okay,
Not
okay.
yet
I didn't mean to put you on Front Street, but I just had to ask.
That was really comical, right? That was comical.
So that's a real president, my brother. You know, and I was actually watching biography of Obama and how he was raised, how he came up in Hawaii. And me and my wife took a trip to Hawaii and visited his high school. It looked like a college campus. And we knew somebody there, Graham's cousin. And she showed us around and we got to see where Obama learned to surf, and it was wonderful. And you could see how his temperament, and he's so laid back. Anybody going to Hawaii, I mean, God is so present. I mean, if you look at nature as God, God's all over the place. I mean, it's just a low-key, I guess any place is heaven when you've got your act together or you have a good temperament. So that's why he has the temperament he has, coming from an environment like that. And how, in this biography, shows how he struggled to his identity, because he's been from 6 to, I forget what age, and Indonesia with his mother's second husband. And so he saw that life in Indonesia. And there was a certain time in 1970 where he was sent back to Hawaii to live with his grandparents. So he really traveled the planet and saw lots of things. So I just want to leave that in to see what, with Joe Biden in the White House, maybe we'll get to see Obama again.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Well,
and Stacey Abrams as VP. That's my dream.
After Biden gets in, what happens to black people? There are some individuals, black individuals, who will benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of black folks having an agenda, we have an unspoken agenda. And we're voting on someone to be our savior again.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does get in, it will be because black voters came to the rescue, as said on the front page of this Final Call newspaper.
As he did when, in South Carolina, Save Biden.
Black voters come to the rescue, but what is the payoff for black people in light of?
Well, God is black, right? So we come to save the planet. We're the spiritual people of the planet. We're the ones we're waiting for. We're the ones we're waiting for. Me, Gillchrist, worker for Christ. I'm here. I'm here to save.
I hear that, but Biden is the guy who's being held up as a champion for us, but he doesn't have a black agenda.
We're judging people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin.
But I think
the content of his character.
But he does need an
signed
agenda.
NAFTA.
I think that's an important.
Signed off on NAFTA. Signed off on mass incarceration.
There's nothing better than a reform racist.
Say that again?
Some of my best friends are reform racists. I had a Klansman.
So he's a reform racist, right?
Well, he can be.
Okay, great.
Like Bloomberg, like maybe even Trump. Maybe he'll get an epiphany.
But to speak to Brother Leroy's point, he definitely needs an agenda that will reflect what it is we
have to bring
need
it to
and
him.
want.
We have to bring it to him. Just like we should have brought an agenda to Obama. You know, you have to force people into doing righteous. And you have to vote. That's the main thing. Vote, vote, vote. Power to the people. That's out to Manhattan. We have another minute for the Bronx.
Give them the recharge, the date again, so they can
Okay,
remember.
so reentry support groups at the National Action Network, West 145th Street. Do you know the
106,
exact address?
106 West 145th.
West 145th from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Second Chance Committee is leading the workshops. Find interaction, support, laughter, guidance, camaraderie, healing,
First
love.
and third Thursdays of the month.
And the Final Call newspaper is national. Black folks should read that. The Amsterdam News is local. The Caribbean News, the Beacon. We should support black media the way this program is supported. And hello to Miss Edie, who I met on 125th Street. Miss Edie, she's a viewer of the Gillchrist experience for years.
I've been around for a long time. Power to the people. God bless. God in me loves the God in you. Boom. We had fun, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.